They say grief brings people together, but in my case, it uncovered the biggest betrayal of my life. My mother had just died. Her ashes still sat on my counter. And that's when I found out. My husband sold her house. Without asking. Without telling. Without my permission. This is what happened next. The box of Mom's ashes sits on my kitchen counter, untouched for 3 weeks. It's unremarkable. A polished cherry wood container with a small brass plate engraved Eleanor Marie Winters, 1957 to 2024. The box doesn't match her. Mom was vibrant, overflowing with life. This container is just contained. I've been avoiding it, avoiding the finality of deciding what to do with her remains. Mom wanted to be scattered in her garden, so I can still help the roses bloom, she'd said with that smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Those roses are behind her house, my house now. Or so I thought. The morning is quiet. Brian left early for a meeting, the third Saturday meeting this month. I stare at the French press, watching the ground settle as I push the plunger down slowly. It's the machine Mom gave us for Christmas 3 years ago, the one she said would save your marriage from bad coffee. I pour the dark liquid into my mug, the one with "World's Okayest Daughter" printed on it, another of Mom's gifts, her way of telling me to stop being so hard on myself. I sit at the kitchen island, the same place where I've been sitting when the mail comes every day since the funeral. Today, there's an envelope from Ridgewood Township. Probably another property tax notice. I've been meaning to call them to update Mom's address, my address now. I tear it open without much thought. It's not a tax notice. It's a deed transfer confirmation processed 2 weeks ago. My mother's house, the Victorian with the wraparound porch and the garden where she wanted her ashes scattered, has been sold to Westlake Development Group, LLC. I read it again and again. The signature at the bottom isn't mine. It's Brian's, my husband's. The coffee turns bitter in my mouth. I set the mug down slowly, careful not to let it slip from my suddenly numb fingers. There must be a mistake. I never signed anything. I never authorized this. Mom left the house to me. It's in her will. The will we read just 3 weeks ago, the day after I brought her ashes home. I hear keys in the front door. Brian's whistling, that absent-minded tune he always whistles when he's pleased with himself. I slide the paper under a stack of mail and paste a smile on my face. My heart is hammering so hard I can feel it in my temples. "Hey, babe," he says, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door. "How was your morning?" "Fine," I say, my voice steadier than I expected. "How was your meeting?" He shrugs off his jacket, the navy cashmere one I bought him last Christmas. "Productive. We're getting closer on the Henderson deal." The Henderson deal. I've heard about the Henderson deal for months now. Brian's real estate development firm has been chasing some property deal that will supposedly set us up for life. I wonder if my mother's house is part of that deal now. "That's nice," I say, taking a sip of coffee to hide my face. "Want some breakfast?" "Already ate," he says, patting his flat stomach. At 45, Brian still looks like the college swimmer I fell in love with 20 years ago. His dark hair has touches of distinguished silver at the temples. I used to find that attractive. Now I wonder how many secrets those laugh lines around his eyes are hiding. He walks to the fridge, pours himself orange juice. I notice the new watch on his wrist. Sleek, expensive. I hadn't seen it before. "New watch?" I ask casually. He glances down as if surprised to find it there. "Oh yeah, got a bonus last week. Thought I deserved a little something." He takes a long drink of juice. "How are you feeling today?" "Better?" The concern in his voice sounds genuine. It always does. Brian has always been good at sounding like he cares. 20 years of marriage, and I'm only now wondering if he ever really did. "I'm okay," I say. Thinking about Mom's ashes. I think I might take them to the house tomorrow, scatter them in the garden like she wanted. Something flickers across his face. So fast I almost miss it. Panic? Guilt? It's gone before I can identify it. About that, he begins, setting his glass down carefully. I've been meaning to talk to you. With your mom gone and everything, I think we should consider selling the house. It's too much to maintain, and the property taxes in that neighborhood are insane. I feel something cold and still settling in my chest. But it's my childhood home, I say, watching his face. Mom's garden, her memories. He comes around the island, puts his hands on my shoulders. His cologne, the expensive one I can never remember the name of, surrounds me, suddenly cloying. Cassie, he says gently, using the nickname I've always loved. Your mom would want you to move forward, not be tied down to an old house that needs so much work. We could use the money to travel. Maybe buy that lake house you've always wanted. I've never wanted a lake house. Not once in 20 years of marriage have I ever mentioned wanting a lake house. I'll think about it, I say, reaching up to pat his hand. My wedding ring catches the light, a 1-carat diamond in a platinum setting. Brian had been so proud when he proposed with it, telling me how he'd saved for a year to buy it. Later, I found out his parents had given him the money. That's my girl, he says, kissing the top of my head. No rush. Take all the time you need. All the time I need. As if it's still my decision to make. He heads upstairs to shower, whistling that same tune. I wait until I hear the water running, then pull out the letter again. The signature is definitely his. I've seen it on enough Christmas cards and tax returns to know. The date on the transfer is just 1 week after Mom's funeral. The deed says $750,000. Mom's house was worth at least $1 million in this market. Probably more. He sold it under value, quickly, to a development company I've never heard of. I open my laptop, type Westlake Development Group into the search bar. It takes some digging, but eventually I find it. A subsidiary of Henderson Capital Partners. The Henderson deal. My husband sold my inheritance, my mother's house, to his own clients, without telling me, without my permission. I close the laptop gently, though every muscle in my body wants to slam it shut, to scream, to break something. Instead, I pick up my phone and scroll through my contacts until I find the one I'm looking for. Catherine Saunders, Eskier's mom's lawyer. We had coffee after the funeral. She gave me her card, told me to call if I needed anything. I send a text. Need to meet, privately. It's about Mom's house. The reply comes almost immediately. My office, Monday, 9 a.m. I delete the text conversation, clear my browser history. Then I walk to the counter, place my hand on the box containing my mother's ashes, and make a silent promise. I'll fix this, Mom, I whisper. I don't know how yet, but I will. Upstairs, the shower stops running. I hear Brian moving around, getting dressed. I take a deep breath, straighten my shoulders, and prepare to act like a woman who doesn't know her husband has betrayed her in the worst possible way. The box of ashes sits on the counter, silent witness to the first lie in what I already know will be many. But some lies are necessary. Mom taught me that, in her own way. The truth doesn't always set you free, Cassandra, she'd said once. Sometimes it just starts a war. And I've just discovered I'm already in one. Catherine Saunders' office smells like old books and new leather. It's a corner suite in a restored brownstone downtown, with tall windows that let in morning light. She's already waiting when the receptionist shows me in, her silver hair pulled back in a sleek bun, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviews a file. Cassandra, she says, standing to shake my hand. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. Thanks for seeing me on short notice. She gestures to the chair across from her desk. Your mother was not just a client, but a friend for 30 years. Anything I can do to help? I sit, smoothing my skirt over my knees. I dressed carefully today. Charcoal pencil skirt, cream blouse, pearl earrings that were Mom's. Professional, composed, the opposite of how I feel. I need to know if what my husband did is legal, I say without preamble. Catherine sits back, folds her hands on the desk. Tell me exactly what happened. I slide the deed transfer across her desk. Brian sold my mother's house without my knowledge or consent, the house she left to me in her will. She studies the document, her expression carefully neutral. Has the will been through probate yet? Number mom just died 3 weeks ago. I have an appointment with the probate court next week. She nods, still examining the document. And your name is on the deed how? Joint tenancy with your mother? I shake my head. The house was still in mom's name. The will states I inherit it, but probate hasn't completed, Catherine finishes, setting the paper down. So legally your husband shouldn't have been able to sell it at all. Then how? Catherine taps her pen against her desk. There are several possibilities, none of them good. He may have forged documents, or ... She hesitates. Or what? Or your mother may have signed something before she died. A power of attorney, perhaps. The thought lands like a stone in my stomach. She wouldn't have done that without telling me. Normally, no, but in her final weeks, when she was on heavy medication, it's possible someone could have taken advantage. My hands clench in my lap. Brian visited mom in hospice, alone sometimes. He'd insisted I needed breaks, that he'd sit with her so I could rest. I'd been grateful then. Can we prove it? If he did something illegal? Catherine removes her glasses. Possibly, but these cases can be complicated, especially when married couples are involved. Community property laws in this state. We have a prenup, I interrupt. Mom insisted. My inheritance was protected. Something flashes in Catherine's eyes, a new interest. Do you have a copy of that prenup? I nod. At home, in the safe. Get it. Today. And anything else that might be relevant. Bank statements, emails, anything showing your husband's actions around the property. She pulls a legal pad toward her, starts writing. I'm going to file for an emergency injunction to halt the sale. It might not work. If the new owners have already begun development, the court might let it stand and simply award you damages. But it's worth a try. And if they haven't started development, then we fight to void the sale entirely. She puts down her pen. Cassandra, I have to ask, does your husband know you're here? I shake my head. Number. And I'd like to keep it that way. You understand this will likely end your marriage? The question should hurt more than it does. Instead, I feel something close to relief. I think my marriage ended the moment he decided to steal from me. Catherine nods, understanding in her eyes. Your mother would be proud of you, you know. Eleanor never tolerated betrayal. No, she hadn't. My father had learned that lesson 25 years ago when he'd left us for his secretary. Mom had taken him to court, fought for every penny, then rebuilt her life without him. She'd raised me alone, putting me through college on her teacher's salary, never complaining. I need to be smart about this, I say, more to myself than to Catherine. If Brian suspects I know, he might try to cover his tracks, Catherine agrees, or make things more difficult. For now, say nothing. Gather evidence. We'll move when the time is right. I stand to leave, feeling steadier than when I arrived. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Catherine says, rising to walk me to the door. This won't be easy, but your mother taught you how to be strong. Remember that. As I head to my car, my phone buzzes with a text from Brian. Lunch today? Haven't seen much of you lately. Miss you. I stare at the screen. 3 days I've been playing normal while documenting everything I can find. 3 days of smiling at a man who stole from me while I was grieving. 3 days of pretending I don't know what he is. I type back, sorry, busy with mom's things. Maybe dinner tonight? Perfect. I'll make reservations at Giovanni's, 7 p.m. Giovanni's is expensive. Brian's celebration restaurant. I wonder what he's celebrating. The successful theft of my inheritance, perhaps? See you there, I text back, then slide the phone into my pocket. That night at Giovanni's, Brian orders champagne. His eyes are bright with excitement as he raises his glass. To new beginnings, he says. I clink my glass against his, smile fixed in place. New beginnings. I have news, he says after we order. The Henderson deal went through. That's wonderful, I say, taking a sip of champagne. It tastes like ashes. Is that why we're celebrating? He reaches across the table, takes my hand. Partially. But I also wanted to talk about the future. Our future. He pauses dramatically. I think it's time we moved. I force my expression to remain interested. Moved? Where? I've been looking at properties in Westlake Shores. Beautiful homes right on the lake. Privacy, security, everything we've talked about. We've never talked about this. Not once. That sounds expensive, I say carefully. His smile widens. That's the best part. With the Henderson deal completed, we can afford it. In fact, he pulls out his phone, shows me a listing for a modernist mansion on the waterfront. I've already put a deposit on this one. The listing price is $1.9 million, almost twice what my mother's house was worth. The coincidence isn't lost on me. It's beautiful, I lie. The house is all cold angles and glass, nothing like the warm, character-filled home I grew up in. But what about my job? I teach third grade at an elementary school 20 minutes from our current house. Westlake Shores would add an hour to my commute. Brian waves his hand dismissively. You've been talking about taking a break anyway. After your mom, I think it would be good for you. No pressure to work for a while. Another lie. I love my job, have never mentioned quitting. But I can see his strategy now. Isolate me in a new community, make me financially dependent, erase the last connections to my past. Classic abuser tactics. How had I never seen this side of him before? I'll think about it, I say, pulling my hand away to take another sip of champagne. Don't think too long, he says with a wink. Houses like this go fast. Over pasta that I can barely taste, Brian outlines his vision for our future. The lake house. Entertaining clients. Maybe start trying for a baby. At 38, he reminds me, my time is running out. The casual cruelty of the comment lands exactly as he intended. Of course, I say, fork pushing food around my plate. It's a lot to consider. What's to consider? His tone remains light, but there's an edge now. It's everything we've worked for. I meet his eyes across the table. For a moment, I'm tempted to confront him right here in this crowded restaurant with its white tablecloths and ambient lighting, to ask him how he could sell my mother's house without my permission, to demand to know who he really is, because the man sitting across from me is a stranger wearing my husband's face. Instead, I smile. You're right. It sounds perfect. The tension in his shoulders eases. He believes me. Of course he does. He's never had reason not to. In 20 years of marriage, I've never once lied to him. Until now. Later that night, while Brian sleeps, I slip out of bed and go to my home office. From the false bottom of my desk drawer, I remove the file I've been building. Bank statements showing a deposit of $750,000 to an account in Brian's name only. Emails between Brian and the development company, discussing the property. Emails I found by guessing his password, his mother's maiden name with his birth year, a copy of the deed transfer, and most damning of all, a document I found in his briefcase yesterday, a power of attorney form with my mother's signature, dated 2 days before she died. The signature looks wrong, shaky in a way that doesn't match any of Mom's other signatures. Even heavily medicated, she wouldn't have signed like that. I add today's discovery to the file, a printout of the lake house listing and the confirmation of a $50,000 deposit made the day after the deed transfer went through. The evidence is mounting. Catherine was right. This will end my marriage. But it was Brian who ended it when he betrayed me, not the other way around. I close the file, return it to its hiding place. Tomorrow I'll make a copy and take it to Catherine. Then we'll decide our next move. As I slip back into bed, Brian stirs, throws an arm over me possessively. "Where'd you go?" he mumbles, half asleep. "Just getting some water," I whisper. "Go back to sleep." He pulls me closer. I lie rigid in his embrace, counting the days until I never have to feel his touch again. The courtroom is colder than I expected, or maybe that's just the ice in my veins. 6 weeks of preparation have led to this moment. 6 weeks of living a lie while building a case. 6 weeks of watching Brian plan our future using money stolen from my past. Catherine sits beside me at the plaintiff's table, her gray suit impeccable, her face professionally neutral. Across the aisle, Brian sits with his attorney, Jeffrey Parrish, a shark in an expensive suit who specializes in protecting wealthy men from the consequences of their actions. Brian hasn't looked at me once since entering the courtroom. The judge, a woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes and a reputation for fairness, enters, and we all rise. "Be seated," she says. "Case number 24-7865, Winters v. Winters and Westlake Development Group. We're here on the plaintiff's motion to void a property transfer. Ms. Saunders, you may begin." Catherine rises, buttoning her jacket. "Thank you, Your Honor. This case is about theft, plain and simple. The defendant, Brian Winters, fraudulently sold property belonging to his wife's late mother, Eleanor Winters, before the will could be probated. He did so using a forged power of attorney document without his wife's knowledge or consent." "Objection," Parrish interrupts, standing. "Counsel is asserting fraud without evidence." "We have evidence, Your Honor," Catherine says calmly, "which we will present in due course." The judge nods. "Overruled. Continue, Ms. Saunders." Catherine outlines our case, her voice steady and authoritative. The will leaving the property to me. The prenuptial agreement specifying that inheritances remain separate property. The suspicious timing of the sale, just days after my mother's funeral. The below-market price paid by Westlake Development, a subsidiary of Henderson Capital Partners, with whom Brian had business relationships. Throughout her presentation, I keep my eyes fixed forward, not looking at Brian. I can feel his gaze on me now, but I won't give him the satisfaction of seeing the pain in my eyes. When Catherine finishes, Parrish takes his turn, painting a very different picture. According to him, Brian was simply trying to spare me the burden of dealing with property matters while grieving. The power of attorney was legitimate, signed by my mother when she was of sound mind. The price was fair given the property's condition, and as my husband, Brian had every right to manage our financial affairs. Furthermore, Parrish adds, my client used the proceeds to secure a new family home, a decision made with his wife's knowledge and consent. At this, I can't help but turn slightly. Brian meets my gaze, his expression pleading. He thinks I'll back down. He thinks I'll go along with the lie to avoid scandal or confrontation. He doesn't know me at all. The judge asks for evidence, and both sides present their documents. The forged power of attorney, the emails between Brian and the development company, bank records showing where the money went, the prenuptial agreement protecting my inheritance. Your Honor, Catherine says, we also have expert testimony regarding the signature on the power of attorney document. She calls our first witness, a forensic handwriting expert who methodically demonstrates how the signature differs from authenticated samples of my mother's handwriting. The shakiness, the pressure points, the angle of the letters, all wrong. In your professional opinion, Catherine asks, is this Eleanor Winters' signature? No, the expert says firmly. It is a forgery, and not a particularly skilled one. Brian shifts uncomfortably in his seat. I can see the confidence beginning to crack in his expression. Next comes the real estate appraiser who testifies that the property was worth considerably more than the sale price, at least $1.2 million in the current market. Catherine establishes that the quick, undervalued sale benefited the development company at my expense. And now, Catherine says, I'd like to call Cassandra Winters to the stand. I stand on legs that feel suddenly unreliable, make my way to the witness box. After being sworn in, I take my seat, hands clasped tightly in my lap. Mrs. Winters, Catherine begins, when did you first learn that your mother's house had been sold? 3 weeks after her funeral, I answer, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to choke me. I received a deed transfer confirmation in the mail. And had you authorized or been consulted about this sale? Number, I knew nothing about it. What was your reaction when you discovered the sale? I pause, letting the memory of that moment wash over me. Shock. Betrayal. My mother wanted me to have that house. It was our family home for 30 years. She specifically left it to me in her will. Did you confront your husband about the sale? I was afraid he would destroy evidence if he knew I was investigating. Catherine leads me through the discovery of the forged power of attorney, the hidden bank account, the emails planning the sale. Throughout my testimony, I can feel Brian's eyes on me, his expression shifting from pleading to angry. Mrs. Winters, did your mother ever indicate to you that she wanted to sell her house? Never. She loved that house. She wanted to be laid to rest in the garden there. And did she ever indicate that she wanted your husband to have power of attorney? Number. If anything, she was wary of him handling her affairs. She insisted on the prenuptial agreement to protect my inheritance. When Catherine finishes, Parrish stands for cross-examination, his approach immediately aggressive. Mrs. Winters, isn't it true that your mother was heavily medicated in her final days? That she might not have been thinking clearly? She had lucid moments, I say firmly, and even in her worst state, she would never have signed away her house. Yet you admit you weren't present when this power of attorney was supposedly signed. I was getting coffee. I left her alone with my husband for 15 minutes. 15 minutes is plenty of time to sign a document, isn't it? Not if she was unwilling. He changes tactics. Mrs. Winters, your husband claims you were aware of plans to sell the house and move to Westlake Shores. He says you expressed enthusiasm about the lake house. That's not true. I never wanted to sell my mother's house, and I never agreed to buy a lake house. But you did accompany him to view the lake property, correct? After he'd already put down a deposit, yes. And you didn't object then? I take a deep breath. I was gathering evidence. I wanted to understand the full extent of what he'd done before taking legal action. Parrish's smile is cold. So you were deceiving your husband? I was protecting myself from a man who had already betrayed me. The questioning continues, Parrish trying to paint me as a coldly calculating wife who turned on her husband without warning, but I hold firm, refusing to be baited into an emotional outburst. When I'm finally excused, I return to my seat beside Catherine, exhausted but steady. The next witness is Brian himself, called by his attorney. On the stand, Brian looks every inch the successful businessman. Expensive suit, perfect hair, confident posture. But I can see the nervousness in the way he adjusts his tie, the slight tremor in his hands. Mr. Winters, Parrish begins, please tell the court about your relationship with your mother-in-law. Brian clears his throat. Eleanor and I were close, especially in her final days. She trusted me with her affairs because she knew Cassandra, was too emotional to handle them. The lie is so smooth, so practiced. I almost admire his nerve. And the power of attorney document in question? Eleanor signed it willingly, Brian says. She wanted me to handle the sale of the house. She knew it needed too many repairs, that it would be a burden on Cassandra. And did you discuss this with your wife? I tried to, he says, his voice taking on a note of martyrdom. But she was deep in grief. I was trying to protect her, to handle things so she wouldn't have to worry. On and on it goes, Brian spinning a tale of himself as the caring husband, the trusted son-in-law, the financial steward acting in everyone's best interests. By the time Parrish finishes, I'm amazed at Brian's capacity for self-delusion. He truly believes his own lies. Then Catherine stands for cross-examination, and I sit straighter. This is what we've been waiting for. Mr. Winters, she begins pleasantly, how long have you been involved with Henderson Capital Partners? Brian blinks, clearly not expecting this opening. About 5 years. They're a client of my firm. And Westlake Development Group? When did you first become aware of their interest in your mother-in-law's property? I don't recall exactly. A few months ago, perhaps. Catherine approaches, hands him a document. Is this your email, dated January 15th of this year, discussing the potential acquisition of the Winters property with Henderson Capital? Brian scans the email, his face paling slightly. Yes, but that's 3 months before your mother-in-law died, correct? Yes, but it was just an exploratory discussion. And this email, Catherine continues, handing him another document, from February 10th, where you state, and I quote, Eleanor won't sell, but I'm working on a solution. Once she's gone, I can move things forward. That was 6 weeks before your mother-in-law's death, wasn't it? The courtroom falls silent. Brian stares at the email, then at his attorney, who looks as shocked as he does. I didn't mean it like that, Brian says, his voice suddenly hoarse. How did you mean it, Mr. Winters? He has no answer. Catherine methodically walks him through email after email, document after document, each one more damning than the last. Plans to sell the property dating back months before my mother's death. Discussions of how to handle me. Cassie will be emotional, but she'll come around once she sees the lake house. Negotiations for a commission from Henderson Capital on top of the sale price, a commission that never appeared in our joint accounts. By the time she's finished, Brian is visibly sweating, his confident facade crumbling. One last question, Mr. Winters, Catherine says. If you were acting in your wife's best interest as you claim, why did you deposit the proceeds from the sale into an account bearing only your name, an account your wife didn't know existed? Brian looks at me then, his eyes pleading. Cassie, I was going to tell you everything. Once the lake house was finalized, it was going to be a surprise. A surprise, I repeat, the first words I've spoken directly to him in the courtroom. You stole my mother's house as a surprise. I didn't steal it. I was managing our finances. Mr. Winters, the judge interrupts, please direct your answers to counsel, not to the plaintiff. But Brian is unraveling now. Everything I did was for us, for our future. You're making me look like a criminal when I was trying to give you everything you wanted. I wanted my mother's house, I say quietly. The only thing I asked for was to honor her wishes. Mrs. Winters, the judge warns, but there's sympathy in her eyes. The rest of the hearing passes in a blur of legal arguments. Catherine argues that the sale should be voided due to fraud. Parrish argues that even if Brian's methods were questionable, the development has already begun, and the court should award damages instead. Finally, the judge speaks. I've heard enough for today. I'll take this under advisement and issue my ruling next week. Until then, the temporary injunction against further development remains in place. As we rise for the judge's exit, Brian approaches me, ignoring the warning looks from both attorneys. Cassie, please, he says, reaching for my hand. We can still fix this. 20 years of marriage. You're throwing it away over a house. I pull my hand back. Not over a house, Brian. Over a betrayal. You knew what that house meant to me. You knew what Mom wanted, and you sold it anyway. I was trying to build us a better future. No, I say, looking into his eyes for what might be the last time. You were trying to build yourself a better future. I was just collateral damage. His face hardens. You'll regret this. When this is over, you'll have nothing. Catherine steps between us. That's enough, Mr. Winters. Any further communication should go through counsel. As she leads me from the courtroom, I feel lighter than I have in weeks. The truth is finally out. Whatever happens now, I know I've fought for what matters. Part 4. After the storm. The judge's ruling comes down exactly 1 week later. Catherine calls me immediately. We won, she says, her typically reserved voice vibrant with triumph. The sale has been voided due to fraud. Westlake Development must cease all work and return the property to its original condition within 30 days. I sink onto the couch in my sister's guest room, where I've been staying since the hearing. And Brian? The judge referred the case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges, forgery, fraud, possibly elder abuse regarding the power of attorney. And she awarded your legal fees. What about the money? I ask. The $750,000? Brian has been ordered to account for every penny. Any funds he can't return will be taken from his share of the marital assets in the divorce. The divorce. The word still feels strange, even though I filed the papers the day after the hearing. Thank you, Catherine, I say, for everything. Your mother would be proud, she replies before hanging up. 2 days later, I stand on the porch of my childhood home. My home now, legally and completely. The development company had only gotten as far as clearing some trees at the back of the property. The house itself is untouched, waiting for me. I insert the key in the lock, push open the door. The familiar scent, lemon polish and old books, brings tears to my eyes. I walk through the room slowly, trailing my fingers over furniture draped in sheets, pausing at photographs still hanging on walls. In the kitchen, I find the china teapot Mom always used for important conversations. Our talks about Dad leaving, about college choices, about Brian, when I first brought him home. I wonder what she'd say now. I exit through the back door to the garden. It's overgrown after weeks of neglect, but the roses are still there, climbing the trellis Mom built herself. This is where she wanted to be. I retrieve the box from my bag, open it carefully. The ashes are gray and fine, nothing like the vibrant woman they came from. But as I scatter them among the roses, I feel her presence more strongly than I have since she died. "I did it, Mom," I whisper. "I fought for what matters." A week later, I'm back at the house, clearing out the garage, when a car pulls into the driveway.